Hey guys, Lock On Castle coming to you with another video, and today I'm joined by Elite Ninja.
Hello, everyone.
As you can tell by the video title, we're going to be discussing video game quality, in specific, why 2019 may not be the year that 2018 was in terms of video game quality. So, I think before we begin, it's probably important to talk about what we mean by high quality video games. We don't mean by, like, your average replayability. We're talking more about critical appeal, sort of like what would be nominated for Game of the Year and what would be memorable in that regard. So with that in mind, let's talk about why 2018 was an exceptional year. So 2018 brought us games such as God of War, Red Dead Redemption 2, Spider-Man, Monster Hunter World, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Celeste, Detroit Become Human, and A Way Out. So of these, probably two majorly stick out, being God of War and Red Dead Redemption 2, which combined pretty much took the Game Awards by storm. Obviously, you still had some high quality titles there, including Spider-Man, Monster Hunter World, AC Odyssey, and of course your indie game of the year, Celeste. And additionally, you had two very interesting kind of genre-defining games in Detroit Become Human and A Way Out, which experimented with what you could do with gameplay in a game. So that was 2018. And here's why it's exceptional compared to other years. So let's take a look at 2017. You got Breath of the Wild, which destroyed at the Game Awards that year. Horizon Zero Dawn, which, while being an amazing game, wasn't quite up to the standards of what you would consider like the God of War, the Red Dead Redemption 2 of 2018. I would say it would be a tier lower, kind of the tier you'd put Spider-Man and Monster Hunter World and potentially AC Odyssey on. Persona 5, once again, I'd put those on the same tier, probably around where Monster Hunter World is. PUBG, which was nominated for Game of the Year, obviously didn't win in 2017, but it certainly started the Battle Royale genre trend. And it is a genre trends in general is something we will discuss a bit later. Super Mario Odyssey, which was once again another great Nintendo game. It wasn't up to where Breath of the Wild was, but it certainly did a pretty damn good job. Resident Evil 7, which kind of resuscitated, I'd say, the Resident Evil series. Especially after like 5 and 6. RE7 was pretty well received. Solid 8.5, 9 out of 10. That's kind of where you start bouncing down to, I'd say, maybe where Detroit Become Human territory is. Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, which was the breakout indie game of that year. Cuphead, which I would consider that a genre-defining game, as it certainly did a lot for 2D type of games, and it did a really good job of what it was. And then Wolfenstein 2, which, well, not being Wolfenstein 1, did an okay job as a sequel. It was certainly one of the more notable games of 2017. So back to 2016. Overwatch, which everyone remembers the year Overwatch came out. That it definitely set a trend for competitive shooters. You also had Doom that year, which was a notable game for a single player. Inside, which was the indie game of that year. Titanfall 2, which had a surprisingly good campaign and did a pretty good job for the FPS genre, especially with the essentially advanced movement dying that year. Uncharted 4, which was undoubtedly the best exclusive of that year. It was a really good game, but I would once again put it around the same standard as, say, Horizon and Spider-Man. Firewatch would be probably your genre definer of the year because what they did with a very different type of game to what you would normally expect was exceptional. Campo Santo, hats off to you. And Gears 4, which was a solid entry in the Gears series, and we'll mention Gears 5 when we talk about potentially 2019, 2020 type of games. And then back to 2015, which I believe to be another exceptional year, which was The Witcher 3, Bloodborne, MGS5, Fallout 4, Super Mario Maker, Undertale, which I'm assuming a lot of people have played that. Rocket League is sort of a genre definer of that year. Nobody expected that to do what it did, and since then I haven't really seen any type of games that have sort of broken the mold like that. I mean, PUBG to a degree. Until Dawn was another genre definer because no, it was sort of took the Telltale formula of choose your own path, but just exploded it in a way that was much different than the Telltale formula. and Rise of the Tomb Raider was also a notable year. So, what I believe to be the major contributors to what I would consider an exceptional year is when there's at least 2 games that just stand out above the rest and pretty much could be labeled as high 9s to 10 out of 10s. So, for 2018, you had God of War and Red Dead Redemption 2. For 2015, you had, say, The Witcher 3 and MGS5. And then for all the other years, you pretty much had one game that would do that. I guess Overwatch sort of would be for 2016. 2016 was kind of a weird year because there was a lot of multiplayer games that got nominated. And then 2017 was Breath of the Wild. So those would be like the 10 10s. Then below that, you have pretty much the high 8s to low 9s, which are exceptional games, but not necessarily this is one of the best games of the generation type of games. Those would be your Spider-Mans, your Monster Hunter Worlds, Horizon Zero Dawn, Persona 5, another one would be Doom, Bloodborne, Fallout 4. Like, they're definitely memorable games, but they're not those, if you're going to buy a system, these are the ones you have to buy for it. And so with that, you can kind of see that every 3 years or so, you're going to get a slate where you can get 2 of those super massive games. Like, we've been waiting years for God of War and Red Dead Redemption 2. So, with that being said, I believe it won't be till roughly 2020, 2021 that we get another year like that, which kind of lines up with the release cycle of the next console. In regards to that, we're probably going to get our next generation consoles around 2020, which leaves a lot of time, which will leave like a year after release of that, so that we get our release games, and then we sort of get into the development cycle for the PS5 and whatever Xbox is cooking up. So with that being said, I think it's a great time to talk about the slate of games for 2019 and talk about what type of games are going to be our super high quality ones of that year, and sort of what kind of year it's going to shape up to be in terms of like notable games. So I honestly think it's going to shape up to be like 2016. Sort of with a lot of multiplayer type games. But let's get to discussing that, Ninja. So, you want to take January and just go through?
Sure. So some of the notable games in January I'm probably looking at is probably Resident Evil 2, Kingdom Hearts 3, and probably Yakuza 4.
All right, and worth noting of that, I think that probably your Kingdom Hearts 3 is probably your most notable. To me, that seems sort of like, I guess you could say a Monster Hunter World, but I think the critical reception on that one's probably going to be closer to kind of what we got with The Last Guardian, where it's sort of been in development hell for years. And it comes out, and it's definitely a good game, but I think it's going to show its age. Which I think will put it somewhere in the 7 to 8 range, probably.
Mm-hmm.
So February, oh dear God. Okay, this is a big month. First of all, you got Ace Combat 7 Skies Unknown, which I just realized might have got pushed back to February. I thought that was supposed to come out in January, but that one, that's kind of a niche game, so that's not too notable. Trials Rising, once again, another niche game. You got a few fighting games in BlazBlue, new entry in that. Another DOA game. Then you get to the middle of the month where you get some interesting things. Crackdown 3. I feel like that's another one that's been in development hell. I feel like that's going to probably be... I think the reception to that's going to be alright, but I don't think it's going to be stellar. I think probably a 7 out of 10 is probably where you'd land that. Would you agree, Ninja?
Yeah, definitely.
Far Cry New Dawn, I'd say I'd label that pretty similar to other Far Cry games, so probably in the 7 range. Where it's,
Right, because I could probably expect to follow like a very similar, if not same formula as the previous Far Cry games.
Yeah, it's Far Cry, so you don't expect anything genre defining, but expect a decently fun romp. Jump Force, I do think Jump Force will be a good game, but I think it's worth mentioning that fighting games in general tend to not be nominated for some of the big awards simply because they don't have as much wide appeal as some other titles. The fighting game community obviously will probably will either accept it or pretty much shun it immediately. We'll know that within probably like 2 weeks of it coming out. But generally, a lot of people don't dip their foot into fighting games, and if they do, they'll probably start with something a little more recognizable in this case, probably Mortal Kombat 11, which we'll get to talk about when we discuss other games coming out in 2019. Metro Exodus, another sequel. That one I think it will do pretty well. I'm thinking probably somewhere in the 8s, which I believe was also what the last two Metro games did roughly. So nothing too major, but definitely a solid game. You also got Anthem, and oh god, I really don't know what to say about this game. I feel like it could be good, but it also could be very bad. I feel like the range of this game is probably somewhere between where Evolve launched, where it was essentially dead on arrival, and who the hell knows what's going to happen or with that if it releases that badly. It also could be a stellar game. It could be essentially what Destiny 2 did with Forsaken, where if it releases at the quality of once the Forsaken DLC launches, or launched, I feel like Anthem will have a pretty good life cycle. I feel like it could almost release it, sort of be like the Overwatch of 2019, but I feel like there's just so many question marks and so many red flags, especially with like the development cycle and the amount of developers and stuff they've been through, that you can't really say it's going to come out and be amazing at this moment in time. You kind of got to wait and see on that one. Into March. Why don't you take March, Brennan?
In March, personally only two stick out, which is Devil May Cry 5 and Tom Clancy's The Division 2.
Yep. Devil May Cry, I think, is your is one of those ones that you could probably say you'd probably put in your top 5 for the year, at least with ones that have been confirmed so far for 2019. Assuming they fixed what happened with DMC, and it looks like they have from the trailers at least so far. So hopefully, fingers crossed, that turns out well. I could see high 8s to low 9s on that. So sort of like a Monster Hunter World type or a Horizon Zero Dawn type level, where it's like maybe it's a good game, but like it's not necessarily got super mass appeal. But it'll probably get award nods, but it probably won't win anything especially because there's probably going to be a massive breakout game of the year, which we'll go into talking about which ones might be breakouts. And then Division 2. Okay, so with this one, I would say the floor for this one is probably where Division 1 launched. Hopefully, at least. I think it'll be good, but there's so many question marks after Division 1 that you can't really argue that you just got, once again, same as Anthem. You got to wait and see how this one turns out. And then April through June, we don't really have that many quote unquote set release dates for that, but we got a few notable ones. Mortal Kombat 11, which I think will be a popular entry for a lot of people for fighting games. Days Gone, I think, will also be a pretty good game. I don't think that one's going to be a breakout. I honestly think the gameplay looks too repetitive, which is definitely concerning. Rage 2, I think that I'm getting Borderlands vibes. The question is it Borderlands 2 vibes or pre-sequel vibes? I feel like it's going to be somewhere in between those, so probably around like a 7 or an 8. I think it'll be pretty decent, but I don't think it's going to be Doom levels of quality. And then Shenmue 3, which I'm probably going to say this is probably somewhere between a Yakuza game and like a Last Guardian game, because this game has been in development for a while. I know it's a really niche game, but I mean, it's kind of hard to judge. It might be a breakout like Yakuza 0 was last year, but I would say probably not, at least at this moment in time. So now we get into the interesting territory, which is the unscheduled releases. For this, we got, remake, we got Final Fantasy VII Remake, which once again probably not going to come out this year. We got an Untitled Battletoads game, that's not really notable. Gears 5, if that does indeed come out, I think that could be very well. I know Gears 4 got really good reception. So if Gears 5 goes that same way with the campaign, I could very easily see it doing higher quality levels than Gears 4, which would probably put it in the territory of Doom, which which in terms of quality, which would actually probably mean it would probably solidly have a chance at Game of the Year if that was the case. So Gears 5 is definitely one to watch out for. Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, I wouldn't think too much of that. I think it's going to be an alright game, but it's been, like 10 years since Ultimate Alliance 2 released, and it's going to be Switch exclusive. I don't see it doing too great. Also got Psychonauts 2. Once again, it's been years since the first game came out. I think it's going to be a solid second entry, but I don't think it's going to be anywhere near the Game Awards. Skull and Bones, that's online only. I think that might be decent, but I really think that one's not going to have enough content on launch, and it's just going to get lampooned for it. I feel like that one's just gonna. I feel like Skull and Bones launch is gonna go badly. You got I believe it's Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. I believe that's being made by Respawn Entertainment. I think. So that one might be good. We shall see on that. We haven't really seen any gameplay, so it's kind of hard to judge at the moment. So now we go on to essentially games that are rumored to come out in 2019. So we got Titanfall 3, which, if that follows the same route as Titanfall 2, I think it will get nominated. Do I think it'll win? Probably not. But I think it'll get some nods for story concepts, assuming it does as well as Titanfall 2 did. And then we get to the two big ones, which are The Last of Us 2 and Death Stranding. Now, I personally think The Last of Us 2 isn't going to come out in 2019. I think if it was to, it'd be probably December at the earliest. But realistically, I think we're going to see that pushed back somewhere into 2020, and I think that it probably is going to... They're probably going to want to put that closer to the Game Awards so it gets more recognition, because generally games that are released at the end of or at the very beginning after a Game Awards, so after Game Awards cycle, so pretty much end of December and January, those tend to the hype kind of dies down over time. So I think they'll probably try to release that June through September, probably somewhere in that range of 2020. But I think Death Stranding has a decent chance of releasing next year. At least based on what we've seen from Walmart Canada. I know they leaked that the release date for that's supposed to be sometime in June, and based on the fact that we know that the game, at least an alpha version of the game, has been completed, I think it's a fairly safe bet to assume that game is going to release next year, given that that Sony kind of has to release at least another exclusive aside from Days Gone next year, and that one's probably the closest to being finished. Personally, I trust Kojima and think it's going to turn out well, but at the same time, we really don't know much about that game right now.
Right.
So yeah. So I think it's going to be one of those that's kind of odd, but kind of takes the thing by storm. There obviously could be many games that just come out of nowhere and take the awards by storm. But I think assuming Death Stranding comes out next year, I think that's probably your front runner for Game of the Year. So Ninja, any other thoughts on other games that might be potential Game of the Years next year?
Not particularly that you haven't mentioned.
All right. So I think now is a good time to talk about why a lesser year is a good thing. And a lot of you might be thinking, but why would you want less good games in a year? Well, first of all, it'll allow you to appreciate essentially the 2018s, the 2015s, where you have a very great slate of big games. I think personally, you need essentially off years to cool down from those. Maybe have a very different year where you have a bunch of like off type instead of like action adventure type games which tend to win or whatever. You have essentially a bunch of like multiplayer games or new genre games where you let the limelight shine somewhere else. You let the development teams work on their major releases. Like a lot of these major years tend to have years of build up and announcements leading into them. I think next year we might get a few announcements if we do see stuff from from the next generation of consoles. I think we may see some launch title announcements. Maybe Horizon Zero Dawn 2, perhaps a God of War 2. I think they're gonna wait until the next generation PS5 is out before they announce another God of War, because I don't think they'd want that as a launch title. Perhaps they'll revive Killzone. And obviously, I don't think we're going to get a Grand Theft Auto 6 announcement, which would probably be the next IP that Rockstar is working on. The only thing I could think of that Rockstar might be working on aside from that we might get an announcement for next year is either a Bully remaster or a Bully 2. Both of which I think would be very interesting games and probably require a lot less development time than their major releases, which are Red Dead and Grand Theft Auto. So, with that said, Ninja, thank you for joining me today. And
All right, thank you.
If you guys have any questions or any ideas for more roundtable discussion videos, post them in the comments below. Thanks.